What is up, guys? This is Joe with Optics, and this week we're talking about the show on Netflix, Jim Henson's The Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance. Now, you can't really talk about the show without at least acknowledging the original movie. And I'm gonna say, watched the movie when I was a kid, and I hated this movie with a passion. I saw Jim Henson, and I was like, awesome, it's gonna be something like the Muppets. And I was not a kid who watched any or many scary things in general, and this movie horrified me as a child. Like, look at all this crap. There's no way this isn't horrifying to a kid that's like 5 or 6 years old. Now, I know what you're thinking. Joe, if you hated The Dark Crystal so much, why are you reviewing this show then? Well, I'm very happy to say that my opinion did change, though it took many, many years before I was brave enough to watch the movie again. When I did watch the movie again, I did see what people loved about this movie. The story was very interesting. The world didn't go too much into it, but you knew there was a lot of lore there, which added to the interest. And you can see the talent behind the people making this of trying to show these puppets with decent movement, and especially for the 80s, it was really good. Now, that was over 30 years ago. How's the Dark Crystal, the show, hold up to its predecessor and in today? Well, I got good news for you. It holds up, and it holds up pretty damn well. First off, I can't give enough credit to this show. When I heard they were making a Dark Crystal show, I heard rumors that it was going to be animated, and part of me was like, cool, it'll be pretty neat. But I also thought, if you do it animated, it's going to take away from everything the Dark Crystal was. Part of what makes it unique is the weird puppetry movements that all the characters have. So when I heard they were sticking with it, I thought it was a wonderful idea. The writing was awesome. The voice acting was awesome. The puppet movement, hell, there were times that I swore it had to be animation, and looking on the documentary of how it was made, most of it wasn't. There was only a handful of scenes that was animated. Most of it was puppets, which is baffling when you see some of the things that these puppets do in this show. There's one character in particular who I saw him and looked at him and I was like, you're definitely animated. No way you're not animated. You're just animated to move a little bit clunkier, so that way you still look like a puppet. And then watching the how it was made for this show, I was completely proven wrong that the character was actually a puppet, and the way they moved him was great. And it was just awesome to see that they didn't take away from what the original was of being a puppetry. And you don't even realize that they're puppets after a certain point. You might for like the first 10 minutes, but after that, you just get engulfed in this world. So major praise to everyone who helped on this show, and the people who I know particular who are gonna get like not as much credit are the puppeteers. The people who made the puppets and the people who actually moved the puppets deserve way more credit than they get, because this was a hard project to do and hard to pull off, and they managed to do it flawlessly. Like I mentioned, this is fully puppeted, or whatever the correct verb for that is, and I'm not gonna lie, I was nervous because from the trailers, I saw some decent action and saw some decent acting. My concern was, are you gonna be able to do that through all 10 episodes? And they sure enough did. There are some action scenes that I could have sworn that person just put on the costume and just acted out the action scene, so that way they couldn't have to do puppets. But no, they stuck with the puppets, and they deserve so much credit for that, because these action scenes look just as good, if not better, than some Hollywood movies now. Then there's a director who directed every single episode. It wasn't just one episode here, one episode there. No, he directed all 10 episodes of this. And it's clear, and I am so happy he did. The directing he did was something that made the show even better. It was unique and different, and I loved it. For example, they have these gorgeous sets of the world of Thra. And a lot of times I've seen directors, if they're showing a beautiful place, they might pan a little bit, but it's often a lot of cuts to different spots of this world. But the one thing that he did, and I loved it, was panning and zooming in and zooming out. It sounds simple, sounds kind of dumb, but the way it is in this show is amazing. It baffled me within the first few minutes of the show with how he directed it, how he chose to, instead of cutting sometimes, just simply slowly pan the camera over so you can see just how gorgeous this world is. Now, before I get too distracted talking about the wonderful people who made the show, let me talk about the actual show. The show does take place before the movie, a decent amount of time before the movie. And it kind of is its own thing, but it still connects very heavily to the movie. In the movie, you see the Skeksis are evil, and most of certain races are almost wiped out, if not completely wiped out. And in this, you see the lead up to that. Because at one time, the Skeksis were basically just praised for being these wonderful leaders, but in the movie, they're viewed more as dictators. So you get to see the gradual lead up to that, which I thought was really cool. The pacing was pretty good too. First episode did not hesitate and just dropped me back into that world and delving deep into some of the things you probably wondered or didn't even think to wonder about from the movie. The second episode was a little bit slow, so I got kind of nervous, but after that it picked right back up and did not stop at all. I rushed through the series faster than I even planned. I also love the show that my only real nitpick is the fact that the second episode was a little slow. Other than that, I can't think of anything I didn't like. All the characters who were the same characters as before, or in the movie, even though they're voiced by different people, are so close you don't even know that it's a different person. And the voice cast that they got was phenomenal. They all did very well. There's not a single voice actor who I didn't like. Speaking of characters I did like, this podling, is the best. And I don't care what you do with the rest of the cast of the show. If he dies, we will riot. Hup is awesome. His name's Hup. He's a podling. He's adorable, hilarious, badass, and awesome. He needs to stay around. So this show did everything that made the original great. It was kind of freaky at certain points. Even now, it still freaked me out in certain aspects and certain things that happened. The movie originally was pretty dark, and this show definitely goes dark. There's numerous times that I was sitting there and actually just dropped my jaw and just went, wow, they did that. And that's not in a bad way. It's actually very good because it's just really dark. It gets political just enough, and it's very well balanced through everything. So with everything being said, I can't wait for season 2. Let me know down below in the comments what you thought of this season. Not only that, let me know of a movie that very much so traumatized you as a child. Also, do not forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Also, like and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.